I'm going to preface this by saying that I was the creepy party involved. I was in a small forest nearby my house one night at around 1 a.m. on a winter night. The reason for this was because I was practicing meditation, and I sometimes like to go out into nature during my sessions. I start under a tree. The place was deserted when I got there, and just calmly melted into the environment. I managed to get into a pretty deep state, so everything was sort of dreamlike. About halfway into it, these two young girls, likely teenagers, came in. They were getting drunk/high and were giggly and tipsy. They sat down about 20 feet from me, facing away, chatting, totally unaware of my presence. Then, one of them noticed me and freaked out. Whoa! What is that? Did you see that? She said to her friend. Then the other one noticed me, an ambiguous silhouette lumped under a pine tree, and shrieked. My response was monotone and drone-like. Don't worry. I am a human woman. I was in a particularly deep state at the time, so I didn't really think about how it sounded until afterwards. One of them responded, kind of stuttering, and asked what I was doing. I explained that I was meditating, and that they didn't need to worry about me, and that they could proceed with their drinking. Needless to say, they laughed it off nervously, and then quickly made an excuse to leave. It started in the beginning of January. Cameron and I were riding the Grand Rapids public bus to go visit my girlfriend, now my wife, and made our way down the wooded hill and into the park. We were laughing the whole time. I think we had watched a movie the night before, and we were discussing it. It was winter, beginning January, and winter in Michigan can get harsh. It had snowed heavily the night before. Walking to the bus stop, I noticed on the sidewalk what looks like a large bag of trash. I approached it, and my friend Cameron told me to poke it jokingly. I was a bit more worried than he, and then I noticed it was a man, wrapped heavily in winter clothing, face down on the snow-covered ground, as if holding on to some scrap of innocent hope. I nudged the man to hopefully spring him awake. I lifted his head as best as I can and noticed the snow was stained with vomit and a frozen bag of candy near his hand. I grew heavy with almost a sort of burden that fell over me, and I was glad that Cameron was there to hand me his cell phone and call the police. We stayed and missed our bus until the police arrived. We were questioned and sent on our way, both of us feeling very uncomfortable. It turns out the man had been heavily intoxicated the night before and made his way to the local superstore to get the half-eaten candy his dead body had been clutching not long before we found him. He fell to his drunkenness, and the weight of the snowbanks covered him from the sight of any cars passing by. The story of the two teenagers finding a dead body was covered briefly in the news the next day. A week later, Cameron and I received a gift card from the man's family, thanking us for finding his body. I'm kind of glad my friend used those gift cards for himself. I don't think I would have wanted them. So this occurred many years ago, but it will forever stay with me and change my views on allowing my kids to ever have their own separate phone line. It was a few weeks after Christmas, and my parents had gotten me my own personal phone with my own separate phone line, because that was the cool thing back then, before the popularity of cell phones. And I had given my friends the number, because who wouldn't, right? Anyways, it was about 3 a.m., and I had been sleeping when my phone began to ring. I thought, that's odd. Who can be calling me this early? We all have to be up for school in the morning. So I answered it. But all I could hear was breathing on the other end. I laughed it off as someone just messing with me and hung up. I tried to return to sleep, but my phone rang again. This time I answered it and said, "Who is this?" Nothing, just breathing again. At this point, I was beginning to get irritated. I told him to stop calling me and hung up. I laid down again for about 30 minutes when my phone rang yet a third time that morning. I was mad, so I answered and said, "This isn't funny. I'm trying to sleep. I have school in the morning. Stop calling me." This time, there was a reply. It was a man's voice, sounded very grovelly, and he laughed and said, "I can see you. You're very pretty. Why don't you come out and play in the snow with me?" With that, I hung up and started crying. I ran to my parents' room, woke up my mom, telling her what happened, and she woke up my dad and made me tell him what happened. So they both got up, and my dad goes into my room and checks the windows and everything, makes sure all the locks on the doors are locked, and proceeds to tell me it's just someone playing a sick joke, that everything will be fine, and tells me just to unplug my phone from the outlet. So I finally go back to sleep until my mom wakes me up in the morning for school. I get up and start getting ready, open my blinds to my window that leads to the backyard, and noticed on this very frosty morning that there were handprints all over my window. I called my parents there, totally freaked out. My dad immediately calls the police. The police come out to take a report and look at the evidence, and they decide that they want to go back to the backyard. Sure enough, there were a set of footprints in the snow that led right up to my window. They had gone from the front of the house to the back to my window, back to the back door, and back to the front door. The police think the guy had tried to get into the house, but couldn't. This experience happened 3 months ago. I am a female, 16 years old, 5 feet 8 inches, and I hate the dark. We just had our school's winter formal, and I wasn't too happy with how it turned out. I tried to look my best for my date, who ended up ditching me for another girl. Needless to say, I was a mess after the dance. Earlier in the day, we met up at my friend's house and ended up carpooling to the dance, so my car was left at my friend's house. So after the dance, I was dropped off at my car. Once I got into my car, I let it loose and started crying, and to make matters worse, when I turned on the radio, Adele's Hello was playing. As I was driving home, I was on high alert because I hate the dark, especially when I am alone. The worst part about my drive is entering my neighborhood because it's poorly lit and there's almost nobody outside at night. So I entered my neighborhood, and my plan was to park the car and grab my phone and keys and just sprint into my house. That is what I did. However, I slammed against the door and almost fell back because my dad had locked the door even though I told him not to, and that I would be home at 1 o'clock in the morning. But I ended up coming home at 11:30 because I didn't want to stay at the after party. I don't remember feeling mad, but I do remember feeling really scared. The only two ways to get into my house would be to go through the garage or the backyard. Both are hella scary. I settled for banging on the door and ringing the doorbell till someone answered. Someone did answer, to all the commotion, but it wasn't my dad. I heard, "Are you okay?" in a muffled voice, and I turned around horrified because the voice didn't sound familiar to me. I saw a figure standing about 25 yards away from me next to my car. It was really dark, so I couldn't make out a face, only a body. I was really scared now and started ringing the doorbell even more. My dad is sort of an asshole/deep sleeper, so either he wouldn't wake up or he was just waiting it out. I sniffled because I was crying, and the voice said, "Are you okay, sweetie?" in that sympathetic tone. I didn't say anything, but just to make myself feel better, I turned on my flashlight that was on my phone and pointed it at the guy. Right as I did that, in a raspy voice, he said, "Don't you dare do that." I turned it off immediately, and about 4 seconds after, I heard commotion in my house, and the door unlocked, and my dad grabbed me, and I noticed the man was running away. My dad called the police and told the police that he looked out the window and saw the man standing there and assumed that that was him who was knocking on the door. I asked my dad why he didn't assume that the car the man was standing next to was mine and that I was the one knocking on the door. But my dad just said, "It could have been anyone's car. Besides, you said you wouldn't be coming home until 1 a.m. The police never found the man because the only description I could give them was his height, which was 5 feet 6 inches relative to my car. So, weird dude, let's never meet again.
Thank you for watching. I always appreciate the support you show me, and I'm forever grateful for it. Hope everyone had a wonderful day. All my social media information is in the description box below. All the story, music, and image information is below as well. And don't forget,